Hello, 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 everybody. It's Betsy here, and today we are solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. You know, the beauty of the quadratic formula is it works to solve all quadratic equations. So if you don't like to factor, or you don't like to use the square root, or graphing, I mean, there's different methods of completing the square. If you don't like to use those methods, this method will work every time. Those methods don't work every time, but these do. Graphing would work every time. But when you're finding the square root, it's sometimes more difficult when you are trying to factor, and well, not everything's factorable. So if you want to just stick with one method, this would be the one to stick with because it'll work every time. So what's going on with the quadratic formula? So first of all, in order to use your quadratic formula, your equation must be in quadratic form. This right here is quadratic form. Your equation must equal 0. If it doesn't, you're not going to be able to use a quadratic formula until it does, because your A, B, and C could be off. All right, next, you can determine how many solutions there are for the quadratic form, for the quadratic equation, by looking at what's called the discriminant. Here you have your discriminant right here. So if you take what's underneath the radical, underneath the square root sign, and just do that much, and you can say you get a positive answer. If you get a positive answer, that means you're going to end up with 2 real solutions. 2. If you do this b squared minus 4ac and you get 0, then you're only going to have 1 solution. Now, if you take b squared minus 4ac and you get a negative number, then there's no real solutions. Remember, your real solutions are the anything that can be put on a number line. So that's the 3 right there. So right away, if you get a positive underneath that square root, you know that you're going to end up with 2 answers. If you get 0 under the square root, you're going to have 1 answer. If you end up with a negative under the square root, you will have no real answers. All right, let's test it. Let's try it out. All right, so let's go to the next page. So we are going to page 6. Let me make this a little bigger and move it up. Just give me a second here. There we go. And let's move it over a little bit. Ta-da. All right. So I want to know how many real solutions will each of these equations have. And the real solutions, again, if you graph the parabola and it crosses the x-axis, those x-intercepts are the solutions. If it doesn't cross the x-axis, there's no solutions. All right, so let's take a look here. Number 1. First of all, we need to look at A, B, and C. So the number in front of the x squared is your A. So A here is 3. The number in front of your x is your B. So B is negative 4. And the constant, the number without a variable, is your C. So we're just going to look at B squared minus 4A. Oops, sorry about that. Minus 4AC. Now, B squared, that's negative 4. You don't even have to worry about the negative sign when you're doing the B squared, because if it's positive or negative, when you square it, it's going to be negative anyways. I'm going to put it in there just because it is B. So negative 4 squared minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is 1. All right. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, minus 4 times 3 is 12, times 1 is 12. And 16 minus 12 is positive 4. Because it is a positive number, we will end up with 2 solutions. All right, 2 real solutions. Let's take a look at number 2. Now, A again is the number in front of your x squared. There's a negative there, so it's actually, A is actually negative 1. B is the number in front of your x. B is going to be negative 4. And C is a number by itself, so C is -4. It already equals 0, so we didn't have to move anything. Now we've got to do B squared, so B squared minus 4AC. Well, B squared, we got -4 squared minus 4 times A, which is -1, times C, which is -4. Now, -4 times -4 is 16. The easiest way to figure out if the rest of this is going to be a positive or a negative, just count your signs, including this one here. So you got 1, 2, 3 negatives. If you get 3 negatives or 1 negative, it's going to be a minus. If you get 2 negatives, it's going to be a plus. So 3 negatives or 1 will give you a minus. 2 negatives will give you a plus. All right. Then you don't have to worry about the signs. Just count, or if it's going to be positive or negative, just count those and put that down. Then just multiply the numbers. 4 times 1 times 4. Well, 4 times 1 is 4, times 4 is 16. And 16 minus 16 is 0, which tells you there's one solution. And you know what that means? It's going to sit on the axis at one number. That's what it tells you. There's one solution. It's not going to cross it. It's going to sit on it. Let's take a look at our last one here. Uh-oh, we've got a problem here. What is it? Yep, it doesn't equal 0. So what are we going to do? We're going to take this +2 and move it to the other side. So guys, -7x squared plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. All you're doing is if you're moving it to the other side, just change the sign. All right, now let's take a look what A, B, and C are. I'm going to change my color again. I like to use different colors. So A is -7, the number in front of the x squared. B is 2, and C is -2. B squared minus 4AC. All right. Oops. I don't know why that keeps flicking off on me, but it does. All right. So I'm going to put 2 in for B squared. So 2 squared minus 4 times A times C. Now, when I do that, 2 squared is 4. I've got how many negatives? Count how many negative signs. Remember, minus and a negative are the same thing. I've got 1, 2, 3. I got an odd number, so it's going to be negative. 4 times 7 is 28. 28 times 2 is 56. So we're going to end up with 4 minus 56, which is -52. Because it's negative, it's less than 0, there are no real solutions. No real solutions. None. All right. So now that should help you a little bit when you're doing these problems. So when you do what's underneath the square root, when you simplify that, you should know how many solutions you have for your problem right away. All right. Awesome. Next lesson, we're going to use the quadratic formula. Have an awesome day.